Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Jay's webinar. This is going to be incredible. I promise you that. Now, I'm not going to introduce Jay the way a lot of other people do. We all know, many of us know, and if you don't, you can look it up. His first act, incredible, massively successful. What's more important to me and what I think is important here is his second act and what he's doing with it. So what I want to say is, look, I've been blessed to have Jay not only as a mentor, but as a friend. And he's a guy that is, for as successful as he's been, humble. And the whole reason why I bring that up and why it's so important is the second act is really all about that, because this is a man that could easily be on a yacht in the middle of the Mediterranean and just enjoying the golden years of his life. But instead, he's taking that success that he's had and he's applying all of that wisdom to us. Servitude, leadership, all of those good things. And the thing that makes that so important and what his second act is all about is for those of us who are over 50 years old. And here's why that's so important. Look, the economy is wonky. I don't think anybody can debate that right now. And if you're over 50 and trying to find a job, we all know there's things like ageism. Maybe you're struggling with your self-confidence and companies just aren't willing to pay you what you're worth. They'd rather hire somebody younger. Now you have AI and the onslaught of what's happening there, and that fear is only compounding. But understand, that's just the outside world going in there. Jay is going to talk about some things that you actually have a major advantage in this economy, in this technology, and in this workforce. So I want to point out a couple of things because Jay's written, this is the third book I believe that he's written, at least that I know about. His first one here was Disrupt You, and I'm sure he'll bring this up. It's in multiple languages. But in this book, there's a few quotes here that I think are really, really important to lay the framework for what he's going to talk about. Now, when I became an entrepreneur, I thought you had to invent something, create something new, something that never existed. And I think a lot of people kind of think that way. And maybe you've worked in the corporate world. Now you're trying to be an entrepreneur and you might have that same mindset as well. But I quote, "Poor design is an opportunity for disruptors looking to make their mark without having to invent or introduce a new product to the world." You don't have to think about it. Google is the #1 search engine in the world, but they were not the first one. You had Ask Jeeves, you had Yahoo, you had all these different ones. So you do not have to come up with something that is perfect, something brand new. Second quote I want to touch on. "Everyone has the power to compete in a global scale without having to raise millions of dollars for equipment and tooling." Add AI to this now. Like this quote is a little bit older now. I believe this book might be 8 or 10 years old. This is a more powerful quote now than it's ever been because you have tools at your disposal that are incredible. The third one of the reasons it is so easy for startups to disrupt major corporations is that big companies are set up to preserve the status quo. Now think about that. What makes a big company successful is the machine, and the machine has to run slow. That's why it works. But now we have AI. You can move much faster. The playing field has been completely equalized here. So there's so much that you can do there. And the one thing I want to pull from this book, which is future-proofing you, and it's a statement that I have lived by trying to future-proof myself here. And it's one of his truths in the Igniting Your Superpower by applying what makes you unique in that chapter. And it's your unique superpower makes you successful. And in the age of AI, that's the truth. There's no competition. You have certain skills, certain experiences, certain wisdom that you can bring to the table and apply to these tools that nobody else can. And once you understand that, and once you start applying all of that wisdom into these tools, what Jay's going to talk about, you have an advantage over all the younger people because they don't have that, but you do. So let's bring up Jay. Let's get his wisdom out here. Let's learn from him because, man, not only is it an honor that you've been a mentor and humble with your time, but I'm so glad that we became friends.
Thank you, brother. Thank everybody. I see all the names, and I'm touched that as busy as people are, that you're spending some time with me today. I really feel like John Belushi today. And what I mean by that is in the beginning of Blues Brothers, one of the greatest films ever made, as insane as he seems, as drunk and funny, he felt like he was on a mission from God to save that little orphanage. It's easy to be cynical with what's going on right now. It is easy to see the dread side of how fast society's changing. I can't succumb to that because I always see hope. The last thing that was in Pandora's box was hope. So let me frame what brought me to bring this book and what I'm trying to, with you, change the world. So a modest thing to cover in a brief period of time. But we are only 1,000 days since ChatGPT dropped onto the world. Think of that for a second. No one played with AI. No one talked about AI. I'd been chairman of an AI company for 7 years, but 1,000 days ago, the masses got to do it. And it was the fastest scaling, as far as usage, number of people of any technology in history. And if you think back to 3 years ago, it was just a novelty toy. It was like the first year of the iPhone when the fart app was a top 10 app. Yeah, you heard me right. It made sounds. People go, wow, I can now make fart sounds with my phone. Nobody thought of OpenTable or Robinhood or the thousands of other things that people do. But AI is different. And everybody that tells you, well, when we got the cars and industrialization, yes, people lost jobs doing this, but there were greater jobs in the information age. The difference here is we've now created a smarter employee, a more loyal employee, an employee that's willing to work 24/7 for nothing. So I want to talk about what is going to happen and then what the antidote for what's going to happen, because I spend most of my life introducing these technologies, and some of the names I'm seeing coming up from my past, I thank you guys for coming, putting the first video on a computer, putting sound on a computer, like all the things, launching the first social network to get 1 million people. I saw the joy of connecting with old friends, of communicating and bringing us together. But somewhere along the line, virtually every technology that I've pioneered and championed got in the hands of people that, how do you squeeze the last dollar? So social media, which we all joined so we could connect, they realized they can monetize it better by stirring hate and divisiveness, that you'll spend more time. Dating, online dating, that went from my options of who I could date or who I meet in the local bar to I can really find a connection across all my variables. But what the dating sites have realized is that if they can intentionally mismatch you, if they can intentionally keep you miserable and single, you're going to be on those platforms longer and be able to monetize. And you now look at people don't go to a club and dance because somebody could be capturing that video and posting it and making you embarrassed. So young people have stopped, and it's just a spiral that I don't want to participate in. But let me go to what's happening now. And I'm really proud of my teacher's aides today. Jenga. So I've often said, and Harrison quoted, my book is now 16 years ago that I wrote Disrupt You, and most predictions have come true. But the thesis of it was every career gets disrupted, every life gets disrupted. And disruption isn't about what happens to you, it's about how you respond. So right now, there are people that have come by that have retired by choice. There are 1.2 million people that have been pushed out of the top 10 tech firms in the past year, not by choice. And according to the World Monetary Fund leader, International Monetary Fund, when I was at Davos, about 30% of white-collar jobs are going to disappear over the next 3-4 years. There's a tsunami coming, and they're pushing out the most expensive people, the most experienced people, the people who got the gray hair from dealing with problems, dealing with problematic people, learning these things. So what happens when you lose your job? Well, first thing when you go to a party, meet somebody, the first question is, what do you do? Well, your job's wrapped up, your identity's wrapped up around it. So you start losing your identity. You lose your purpose of what you're about, okay? And if we take away everybody whose job is touching and facing a computer, so everybody that's a middle management that takes numbers from here and prepares them for a report there, or gathers information of what's happening with the supply chain or any type of reporting, AI does that better. So now they have AI, which is smaller and cheaper, can do those things. So what's going to happen to people that are pushed out is, well, they'll start using a 401k to live on. Because we were all told what inflation rates were. The past 100 years, if you take out the past 3 years, it's a little over 3%. That's over time. 3.77 if you take the worst things. We're now seeing our dollar not being the global reserve currency. Conversation for another day. Our national debt is now greater than our GDP. And there's a point at which that tips over. So what happens as people at the top start taking on debt, another thing happens. The people that are losing their jobs in the white collar range of things, they're what banks call AAA rated. They're the best ones to give loans to because they make the good money. But now they can't live the lifestyle. And the lifestyle has been pressed because we now have the top 30,000 people own 90% of everything. 90% of all the bank accounts, 90% of all the land, all the stock. So when you feel like, wow, I thought I was successful, I thought I've attained, I thought I'm at a certain level, and I still feel the stress like I'm behind the 8 ball, it's not you. The system has been gamed. The middle class has been eviscerated. So what's going to happen is people start then liquidating their stocks or their Bitcoin and gold. So it used to be that these were counterbalances, but they're all going down at the same time because everybody's behind this 8 ball. And when they go down, right, the government prints money. That's what we did in 2008. So 25% of our multi-trillion-dollar national debt has happened just under one president. And I'm not mean by politics. The rate of inflation and interest on things would have tackled anybody, okay? So banks are going to start failing. If you can't pay your mortgage, real estate starts failing. And we tackle more debt. We're rolling our dice on AI. And the other one, which I won't talk about today because it is science fiction, is if you think when this collapses that somebody's going to come up with universal basic income, you're smoking something. It's not going to happen. So no one's looking about society. And if I stop holding this up with my fingers, I'm just going to hold on to the debt and stuff at the top. You get what happens. But I'm not for the negative, okay? We can turn it around. And that's what I want to focus on. I want to focus on what we can do, each of us. Because what has happened during all this insanity is people start withdrawing. The first people that really got hit by this dramatic change was blue collar. We saw factory jobs go overseas. And we lamented it, but corporate boardrooms, profit. I sit on a board with somebody from Foxconn. They're the ones that make your iPhones and your PlayStations and all of those devices. And they told me not too long ago that, and for example, they did employ 3 million people in Southeast Asia. So Vietnam's biggest employer. They now have 9 lights out factories. And I had to ask the first time, what's the lights out factory? It's literally, the lights are out because there's no humans anymore. It's all been automated. And the reason why Tesla and Unitree and everybody's making humanoid robots now is because every job was designed for a human form factor. So your warehouse workers, your drive-through windows, your truckers, your everybody, it's massive. Now, at the same time that that's going on, the world needs anybody over 40 more than ever. Because institutional knowledge isn't what's happening with AI. I'm not anti-AI. AI is like every technology, it's neutral. As a child, I delighted at gunpowder, at watching fireworks. It's the most spectacular thing. Somebody else figured out it can kill people. Right now, AI is curing diseases, mapping proteins, changing our trajectory to the point that David Sinclair, the head of aging at Harvard Medical School, said that walking around us right now are people that will live to 150. And not because you're going to spend half of your life over 75, it's because they're now able to reverse aging in cells. And I'll get into that in a little bit, and I'll get into it in the book. So you just have to stay healthy for the next decade. Most of what kills us will disappear, most of the cancers and everything. But what good is that longevity if you're idle, if you're on the sidelines? You know, the ancient Romans had, I won't do the Latin, bread and circuses. Just give the masses, let them see the games at the Colosseum, and give them food and distract them, and they won't realize that they've been enslaved and pushed aside. But there's a different path. And the different path, and this is why I called it the second act advantage, is you're not the same person you were when you started out your first time, whatever your career was, or you've had several careers. And if you failed at starting something, congratulations. You don't learn anything from success. I ran music labels. The 17-year-old kid that becomes a superstar has learned nothing, and it's really hard for them to survive and make it to 40. There's a reason why so many die at 27. But when you fail, you don't end up where you started. You either earn or you learn when you try something. So you've built up this resolve, you've built up this inertia, you've built up this wisdom, and you've also built up a network of friends and associates. When I see where I know some of the people that are spending their time on that call, and I thank you all, you pick up and collect like-minded people. That's your advantage. Now you add AI, and AI isn't this evil tool, it's a force multiplier. You can now start a startup, raise no capital, and make millions. Or you can go back to your youth if money isn't your driving motivator and say, what were those injustices that you wanted to focus on and do, but you got busy with a career and family and you didn't get to solve the problems that you see in the world and heal the world. Well, now you have a tool that can do it. In my corporate speeches, I always talk about, the self-made billionaires, the Bill Gateses and the Steve Jobs and the Richard Bransons and all that. But there's a new guy in my list, a guy named Alexander Wang. His parents weren't anybody, no special anything. High school, at 18, he starts his AI-based startup. At 19, he sells it and becomes a multi-billionaire. That's the power that you now have in your hands. And here's the big surprise. No one at Anthropic, no one at Meta, no one at Google is trying to solve any of the things that you want to build. They built these tools because the model that they live under is whoever can get the most electricity can power the most chips, which means they can have the most compute, which means that they win. So this year, Amazon and Google, just two companies, will be spending $700 billion just on data centers. That's an incredible amount of money. And those data centers, there's not enough power to power them. Right now, AI is going to use about 35% of our electric grid. which means energy costs for your house are going to go through the roof. They're turning on a 3 Mile Island to see if they can get that nuke going again. Because the powers that be, and I'm trying to keep politics out of this really hard, have made this an arms race. They've been convinced by the tech geniuses that if the bad guys get to better AI first, they dominate the world. And they've sold the military that if we do it, we dominate. So they've taken the guardrails off. No one's focused on the good things that it can do. So I need everybody to get off of the sidelines. I need you to get engaged. I need you to start using AI to solve things. So the book is going to tell you about how to use all the tools, and we have an online community. But let me take the step back, because I want to show you some of the people that you'll get to meet in the book, because you don't get to see their pictures, and why this is so important. Retirement kills more people than smoking. We were not designed to be idle. And now, let's see if I can actually use technology and call up a deck for a second. You have a 51% chance, greater risk of dying, of all forms of dying, if you stay on the sidelines. Our parents' generation, retirement was different because life expectancy was different. Or our grandparents, even worse, 100 years ago, life expectancy was 35. Now life expectancy, as I said, is going to push north of 120, and we weren't prepared. Your second act, what you get to do in these years with this amazing technology, will be longer than the rest of your whole career. So that's why you want to get involved. And the second you stop using it, you'll lose 30% of your short-term memory your first year retired. My mother, who I lost 2 years ago, one of the brightest people I've ever met, and I've met bright people. Well, she retired at 40. Stop challenging yourself, stop doing. At the end, the Alzheimer and dementia is not the way you want to see anybody die. Her body was alive longer than she was. So all the economic data, all the national data, all the health data, everything, and there's 300 plus footnotes in this book, point to that you have to keep yourself engaged. So let me give you a simple one, and I saw Karen in the thing, and Harrison does this. A guy named Roger Whitney. He decided, he's retired, he understands about retirement, he's just gonna get a microphone, sit at his desk like I'm doing, and do a podcast. Doesn't take any capital, doesn't take any special training. He's making about $1,000 a week for 1 day a week or a couple hours a week. I mean, great. And you're engaged with people, you're helping people, you have a purpose, you're making life easier for others. Somebody else took it to the next level. Turns out people love to talk about sports. Bill took it to the nth degree. He's making $7 million a year from his podcast. Spotify just bought it for $250 million. These are obviously the extreme cases, but there's no limits. Okay, cognitive decline. I want to talk about Nola. You'll get to get these stories in the book, but you don't get to see their pictures. Nola graduated high school in 1929. Let that sink in. But it wasn't until 2006 that she drove her car across the state of Kansas and moved in as a freshman to the dorms. I would have loved to seen the look on the face of her freshman roommate. She started college at 94. She not only graduated, she got her master's, and she got a Guinness World Record, right? Anything's possible. Mobility issues, all these things. This is the last person that I wanted you to actually see, because you don't get to see her in the book. I'm not shaming anybody, but most of us fall apart physically, not because biologically that's what aging does, but because we're not using it. So Joan was 71, you can see her, overweight, arthritis, acid reflux, high blood pressure, very typical. Typical American is on many medications, and you know, you can judge a person by which they take 2 at a time, pills or steps. So her daughter begged her to exercise, and what she did was one step further. She decided to do the public humiliation if she gave up, she would exercise on Instagram. She started at 71. And I'm Joe Pizza that doesn't go to a gym. I mean, and I confess to all that in the book as well. But let me show you the old girl now, as the old expression is. That's her at 80. She could kick anybody on this call's butt. But more important of the transformation of her body, the transformation of her purpose, the transformation of all of the, drum roll please, 2.2 million followers that she is motivated to have a better life. So that's what the second act advantage is about. Getting off the couch, off the sidelines, and getting re-engaged, because there's a lot of people that don't see how to make a future. And it's only entrepreneurs that create jobs and create opportunities and can mentor the next generation that didn't live in a pre-digital world, that doesn't understand there's other ways to connect with people, other things to do. And I spell that all out. And that's why I wanted you here today. Enough with the negative stats. So the other problem is when people retire. I talked about the loss of identity, the depression, the instability. When we saw the blue-collar crowd lose it, that's why opioids took off at that time, alcohol. People were trying to numb the pain, that the promise that they thought society would have for them. Work hard, get a good job, support your family. It didn't happen. Divorce rates went up. I bought into the get a good job, go to college, get good grades, live happily ever after. Today's students, today's kids that graduate this month from college are less likely to be hired than those graduating high school this year. Let that sink in. And those graduating college, for the most part, are graduating with a mortgage but no house. Every other form of debt you can bankrupt out of it, but this college debt that many signed on to as minors, they signed it at 17, they can't get rid of it. So they're enslaved. They can't take risks of starting a business. They can't follow their passion. They can't try their hand at being the next writer, the next stand-up comic, the next actress, the next singer, because the system has put handcuffs on them. They need you. So exercise, it's great. Eating the right things, it's great. I'm not talking any of that down. But for me, the second somebody tells me you got to do so many hours and walk so many miles and you got to eat two figs and a berry, I don't even start. So I tried to cover in the book, what's the bare minimum to live 28 years past 60? And I did all the research, all the science that didn't exist when we started, when I was in school. And there's a Nobel Prize that went out, and I'm not giving medical advice. Talk to your doctors. I'm not a doctor. But there's a thing discovered called autophagy. Short version, your body, when it's in rest, repairs itself. But when your body gets no food, it really goes into overdrive. The mitochondria in each cell says, Jay's not feeding us. We're going to die. Let's shut down anything we don't have to feed to keep alive. That broken strand of DNA, shut it off. Don't give it any glucose. Don't give this one any energy. Those weird cells, cancer, don't give it. So just by going into autophagy, which takes place after about 12 to 14 hours of no food, your body repairs cell by cell. You do that often enough, once a month, whatever. Look at how many people that had been in horrible starvation situations, the Holocaust survivors that lived to 100. This is your body, but we've been working and not taking sleep seriously. Sleep is the key to longevity. Treat it like a job. You don't say, tomorrow I'm going to show up at work at noon or blow off the day. I'll make it up on the weekend. No. Hit it at the same time. Don't eat the few hours before. Don't eat a few hours when you wake up. And basically, of the 9 things to live longer, more than half of them you can do while you're asleep. I can't make it any easier than that. This is the lazy nerd's guide to living longer, and I'm the proof of that. So we're the first generation that has this gift of this extra time. And I don't want you to think about yourself for a second. I want you to think, what can the world gain? Because you have the time to focus on it. I am not some holier than thou, better than thou, anything. My focus was my boys. I had kids by the time I was in my early 20s. I wanted them to have a good life. But when they grew up and they didn't need me in the survival sense, and I wanted them to have their independence and start their families and be successful, I literally had no purpose. And you people that are on the call, literally my street team, so to speak, you've helped me find a purpose. Because when I wrote a book, and I posted about this today, I thought I was just sharing what I know to help people. I didn't expect a dialogue. I didn't expect to hear from people in 140 countries. I didn't expect the things that I learned applied to cultures that I know nothing about. But every educational system was designed to make employees. Parents wanted you not to fail so you wouldn't suffer, and yet suffering and failing is where growth comes from. So I tried to point people in a different way. I volunteered for 10 years and taught at SE. That's a lie. USC paid me $16 a class to teach. They charged the students $7,000 a unit. It was a 4-unit course, so you do the math of what they had to pay to be in the class, and they charged me $20 to park, so I volunteered. But I saw that kids were getting something that they weren't getting from learning how to engineer or learning, how to write a business plan. Those things are arcane. Our yearly review cycle. Yeah, the original Fortune 500 companies, less than 10% are still around. So it is changing quickly. Let me get the slides off, because staring at slides. Oh, one more slide after this, and then I'll get off the slides. David Sinclair is a doctor dedicated to expanding our health span. Lifespan is a misnomer. You don't want to be hooked up to machine unconscious for 150 years. You want to be you. They have figured out how to take mice and make mice younger. It's the Yamanaka genes. Don't need to know the science, but they can take mice at the age of 200 and make them teenagers again. And they're now in human trials taking people born blind, converting other cells into stem cells, no embryos involved, and taking the OSK of Yamanaka genes, the things that sit on top of DNA, and making the blind see. That same reprogramming, changing the epigenetics. If in questions, I'll go into detail. I don't want to bore people with science today. And there's all the footnotes and studies. So when you read the book, I don't bore you with that stuff, but I point you to, please get as excited if you want to go deep. But these are all the things that they've been able to already reverse. So obviously industry wants to get behind, the skin. Maybelline wants to be able to give you teenage skin. You can now get teenage skin. Do you need Maybelline? Not finding fault. But kidneys, right? Kidney disease will go away. Lung disease goes away. Heart disease goes away. High blood pressure goes away. Cancer goes away. You just got to stay healthy enough to get these things through human trials, and they're starting in human trials now. This isn't hype. If you say, well, my dad died of this, my mother had this, my grandparents had this, your genetics, the genes that you have, just load the gun. What you do with your lifestyle pulls the trigger. And the number one thing you can do is finding ikigai, the Japanese term for purpose, the reason to get out of bed each day, right? And so what are you going to do with this time? So if I seem passionate about this or preachy, there's a moment in time that we can make a difference, where we can change the arc of humanity. Because really what we do with AI why it's still available to us, why it's still free tools that allow us to do anything. I mean, yeah, I would love, if you saw the trailer I made that was claymation, I would love right now to just be making little Gumby movies. Oh my God, it is so much fun. It's just like painting, which I love to do. But I feel compelled because for whatever reason, which I'll never understand, none of the billionaires get this. And I have bizarrely had a lot of people in my life that I worked with that have become billionaires. Like I never met a millionaire. I didn't know what people did in office buildings. My dad made sandwiches. And yet, most of them, the nicest thing that they'll do is they pledge that their $100 billion will go to charity after they're gone. If they were sincere about that, they already have the ego that says, I'm smarter than everybody I've ever met. They'd be using it to get the most mileage to do the most good. And of the 300 billionaires that signed the pledge to give away most of their money, all but 15 have reneged, right? And the few billionaires, and I'm really burning bridges today, that have changed were the ones that got a medical diagnosis that told them they had 6 months to live, and it turned out to be a wrong diagnosis because during those 6 months, they focused on legacy. And they then got the feedback that you got, the joy that comes from helping others, the joy from having a purpose that is greater than yourself. I get it now, okay? And I'm not dictating what that purpose is. There's people that want to save animals. There's people that want to make vegan food. I don't want to spoil all the great stories in the book, but one guy was getting his oil changed. He was a civil engineer, just minding his own business in a car dealership, Jiffy Lube. And there's an old, greasy National Geographic, and he sees a picture of a flooded torrent of the Nile during rainy season in Africa, where for people to get to town, to get to school, to get to the hospital, there's a rope across, and they got to do like that. And he's like, I can build an Indiana Jones bridge and connect the village to the other side. So whatever motivated him, boredom, want to prove himself, he goes, he builds the bridge. The people are so grateful. He sets up a 501c3 and will teach you how to do a charity and how to do all that. And he's built hundreds of bridges. He's connected millions of people. His life is about something greater. When Steve Jobs was bored and depressed, something that's immeasurable, impossible to imagine, to my mind, you're the world's richest man and you're depressed? Like, what am I not seeing? But I realized I have something that no billionaire that I've ever met has. I have enough. I'm not writing the book to make money. I'm not setting up the online society to make money. I'm setting it up to fulfill a purpose, to do something that is a legacy. And so that's what we're talking about here. So the book will teach you how to do these things. If you're struggling, most people hit retirement age with 0 to a negative net worth, meaning they have debt. Many move overseas. 2025 was the first time in the history of the United States, our 250th anniversary, where our population went down because more Americans are moving away than staying. And it's not just the wealthy. The wealthy all got their second passports. They've got their escape plan. They're leaving the debt on the rest of us. But the people that thought the promise of Social Security was a promise, they realize they can't afford to live here. But my message in the book, and when you go to the online community, is you can live more richly for less money. By more richly, places that have free health care, places that have no crime, have better climates, that are filled with expats, so you don't even have to learn another language, though the best way to keep neuroplasticity and keep your brain young is learning a language. The number one language that you can learn for that is one that involves using your hands, learning sign language. So I'm trying to give you the tools wherever you are. There are two problems with my first two books and with everyone's books. One, the second it hits the paper, the easiest way to distribute it to airports so people that are bored will buy it and get it out there. Second it hits the paper, it's out of date. And AI, I mean, I have a team looking at every tool every day, and we can't keep up. So that's problem number one. Number two, I'm not a mind reader, or more importantly, I can't read a million minds. I don't know each of yours journey. So what we did, and Skip and Jonathan, who were on the call today and running it, are the brains behind it, we built a custom AI that doesn't have a corporate agenda. It can't get hijacked like social media was to cause division or to limit what you can see and can't see and say. It's just based on my books, my Wall Street Journal columns, my Fortune columns, my Harvard Business Review, my hundreds of speeches around the world. That's what it was trained on. It wasn't trained on Twitter and Reddit. It's not going to start cursing you out or calling you racial epithets like all the other ones are that have been put into drive-through windows and are failing. And the team will continue to work on this to give you new tools, new chapters, more things that you can use. We're making most of the community for free. We're going to bring in people that we vetted, courses that we think can give value, and other things at another level that is a minimum upsell, which at this point we're gauging at $9 a month, and anybody that pays that will never raise it on you, to pay for all this so it can become self-sustaining. Again, it's not meant as a money-making thing. And we may at some point turn it into 501c3 and take foundation money or something like that. But the goal here is you need daily motivation. It's like a shower. Me preaching today, there's a reason why churches and temples and mosques meet weekly. The flock needs reinforcement, no matter how dedicated you are. And it's just human nature. We get distracted. There's a squirrel. But if you start posting, once you start reading the book and you start posting on social media, the hashtag Second Act Society, you're going to find others doing similar things in other continents, doing different things but of the same heart and soul that you can meet at the farmer's market. Go for a walk to get in your 7,000 steps. You don't need 10,000. And reinforce each other, because you become who you hang out with, right? You are the sum of the people you spend your time with, and you're sitting down with Debbie Downer and people that have checked out and are doom and gloom. It wears on you, it eats on you. I have been so blessed that and didn't see what happened in social media, because my feed was made of people changing the world whose bragging wasn't, look at my avocado toast, or look, I'm on Capri. It's, look what I discovered that some scientist is doing somewhere, and I have the bragging rights because nobody in the group knew about it yet. I still remember when a friend showed me CRISPR the first time. That's gene editing, so that a child with leukemia, the leukemia is gone. ALS will be gone very soon. This is the greatest time to be alive. I got to be alive for the Beatles and work with 3 out of the 4 and get to do all the crazy things. I got lucky. My first act, I was 21. I was full of myself. I was the smartest person in the room. I knew everything. I was wrong. I was an idiot. I got lucky. And I got enough validation, have enough fear to pay a mortgage and kids and debt that I propelled, but I got to hang around with people that were changing the world, and I realized it's possible. I'm not the smartest, and by the way, some of the billionaires, not too bright, some of them. Reid Hoffman, smartest guy, like amazing and a good heart. But it just takes persistence. Whatever you want to do, no one can stop you. Your favorite novel, your favorite movie, your favorite song, your favorite rock band, your favorite painting was somebody that didn't listen to everybody and just kept moving forward. And so I want to dedicate part of my week to answering questions, whatever your questions are. I can't scale if this becomes super big, so I'll go at some point behind the velvet rope, because I just don't have the time. And the people that hopefully can learn and can fill in some of those roles. Funny aside, when I did the first auction that morphed into eBay, and in the beginning of eBay, the tech support was unbelievable. The guy seemed to be on 24/7, never slept. And eBay, just to refresh people, was mom and pop starting businesses on their own with no business background from their kitchen table. First time, at a time when people were afraid to put credit cards on the web. Tons of people, the average visit to the site was 45 minutes, and nobody had been on the internet before. Nobody knew how to send an email or take money or any of those things. And there was one guy who was answering everybody's stuff. And so at some point, they go, we want to give this guy a raise. Somebody's going to steal him. He's unbelievable. Who does he work for? And lo and behold, we found out he wasn't an employee. He was somebody that volunteered because he saw the bigger picture. And then Jimmy Wales, I lost an argument with Jimmy Wales. Jimmy Wales created Wikipedia, and I go, this is genius. Here's how we're going to make money, because that's where my brain goes to. And he was right. Had he let me prostitute it out to corporations, we wouldn't get unbiased, the whole world creating an unfiltered set of human knowledge. So I'm trying to take the goodness of these people and put it in your hands. The people that are on this call today, you're the ones that I hope will stick with it, invite friends, get them to get the books. If there's another ask, and I'm going to be asking a lot because I feel the speed at which AI is going to dramatically change. I don't expect large corporations to get a heart. I was a CEO. CEOs do not care about shareholders. They do not care about employees. They want to hold on to their job because you get paid a ton of money. And if you don't hit your numbers, you're out the door. Like CEOs are like a piece of cheese. It doesn't last long. But if I can get somebody to get to somebody head of HR, these people, to give everybody that's getting laid off a book, and I'll let them change the cover so it says, United Steel cares about you, good luck, or, whatever. I don't want to out any company. And get these in the hands because I saw the impact. With Disrupt You, a teacher wrote me an email that just hit me in the gut. She said, I teach in an inner city where when kids, if they graduate high school, they have two choices. They get to say, would you like fries with that or go to prison? Can I adapt your book for high school kids and have it taught in school to give them a third choice? I'm like, go with God. How can I help? Do it. Long story short, she earned Teacher of the Year. Amazing woman. And with that validation, I was able to use my access to corporations to get HP to print copies of her thing and make sure they were in every boys and girls club in the country. Yeah, I can't force a horse to drink, but there is somebody raising their hands. That's what I learned with the first book. That's what I learned, that there are people looking for help, and you will find them and they will find you. And my promise to you is you will have a better future being engaged. So I've done enough of the monologue. I don't know if you've all tuned out. I'm just talking to myself. So if we can get Harrison back on, Skip, Jonathan, whoever does the magic controlling this, and we'll take your questions. You've been patient, everybody. I could talk for days, but this should be a dialogue. So Harrison, the floor is yours. I promise to stay on to answer every question I can.
Well, no, let's talk a little bit deeper, and we'll take questions here as people jump into the chat. But look, how do you overcome this fear initially, right? Because I can tell you myself, I've worked in marketing over 20 years, and I just crossed that divide here recently when I hit 50. I started feeling like a dinosaur in an industry, right? How do I tell you to sell your book to do a TikTok dance, right? This cultural change had really impacted. Yeah, I felt, and I'm looking at all my marketing peers around me, and all of a sudden they're all 20, 21 years old, right? So kind of help us overcome that initial fear of I'm just old and I'm now so disconnected from culture.
So I don't wish this to happen, but here's what I think will happen, okay? Again, I wish a different outcome. If we start having several years of double-digit inflation, right? If China and the Middle East are able to buy oil and not have to buy it through dollars, I don't want to talk about economic policy, and we stop becoming the reserve currency. China and Japan have dumped all they're not buying treasury bonds. If we can't sell treasury bonds to anybody, then we can't continue to print money. Most countries don't get to print money. So if you start having massive inflation, whatever your amount of savings that you thought you have for the rest of your life disappears. It's the Weimar Republic, with the wheelbarrow to get a loaf of bread. So somewhere between that, between being forced out of a job because you're too expensive, I had a colleague on the phone the other day, top of his field of what he does and everything, making around $500,000 a year, got laid off. And he's like, nobody's responding. I go, no one's hiring you. What you did, they don't believe they need anymore. Whether they're right or wrong is not the argument. Your resume, your LinkedIn page is being read and analyzed by an AI on the other side because there's 10,000 people applying for every job, okay? You can't get to the inbox of anybody, da-da-da-da-da. And for women who had to fight through the 70s, 80s, and still today to get to the C-suite, to get taken on equal footing, to make equal pay, why I don't realize people realize that they have the same brains and they're actually easier to work with because they don't have this going on all the time. But they had to fight a thing called the glass ceiling. They couldn't push through. Well, now there's a glass floor. So those that are worried about their kids coming out of college or their kids that you're still supporting partly because their career hasn't taken off and you're like, what's wrong with them? It's not them. The entry-level spots, absolutely AI does better, and no CEO is trying to build 5 years out to have future good employees. They're just trying to hit their next quarter, the next 2 quarters, back up the Brinks truck, right? That's why I couldn't sit on another big board and do that anymore. I spoke the truth and nobody wanted to hear it. I was involved, one of the, I'm under too many, giant merger that makes all the headlines, which they sold to everybody was, synergies of, and I went in day one, though I wasn't supposed to talk the truth and say, guys, there are no synergies. One's peanut butter, one's jelly, and there's no Reese's cup, okay? So you did the deal. What are we going to do? And what they did was, let's assign somebody else to deal with that client because that client's now pissed. Did what I say come true? Yes. Do I always speak the truth? Yes. And I had another CEO said, how did you get these corporate jobs? There's nobody like you in companies because the second you go against whatever, you're out the door. I said, yeah, but I left the door because I didn't want to be in the big company. I went in with a new idea, built a new thing, made them billions. Once they figured out that they don't need and they'll just do the step and repeat, I can't make GM make 2% more. I don't want that. There's always something new. So anyway, fear is going to motivate everybody. So unless you're sitting at 50 plus million, you're going to be hit by inflation if you're going to live another 50 years, right? That's a staggering thing to tell somebody, okay? And if you're worried about your kids, like, what should they major in college and all those things? I still do the college talks for free all over the place. I don't post them because I don't want to keep on telling universities that, they're ripping off people. The universities that I now have consulted to, there's more baby boomers now retiring than there are college kids to put in colleges. Japan sells more adult diapers than kids' diapers. People stopped having sex because of technology. So convert your dorms to senior living places, not old age homes for people that can't do anything, not assisted care. People that would like to go to lectures, like to learn, like to be engaged. Have the dorms, have young people, have cross-generational conversations. Reverse mentorship, you can teach people that have never experienced working in humans and, have been digital nomads their whole life, and you can learn how to use these tools from them. When you build a community garden, when you take an empty plot of land in an urban desert that doesn't have any fresh vegetables or foods so people can eat healthy, you're not just growing tomatoes, you're growing friendships, you're growing community, you're growing what we lost. So fear will get them there. And fear's a great motivator. It got me to above where I wanted to be in a career. Now my fear is not personal fear. So are you reading questions, Harrison, or somebody? Because I want to really just
I got
answer
a question
questions.
coming in from Kelly Richards. So here we
Hey,
go.
Kelly.
What? You ready? Okay. My biggest competitors as a strategic advisor who is a retainer-based Our colleagues who have become extremely wealthy in, hold on, it's off of there, in tech and who work with the kind of ventures I want to work with, but who don't need to take retainers, pure equity. What say you about that? Despite my time at Apple, I wasn't that fortunate and still need to make real dollars.
The pitch that I would say to somebody, Kelly, is you want I'm speaking as you, Kelly, you want my strategic advice, you want my planning, you want my help, because you're facing an existential threat to the existence of your company, okay? So if you want to count pennies, when $100 bills are at stake, that's on you. But here's what I will tell you the difference between me and my advice and somebody that made boatloads of money. They didn't make boatloads of money because they were smarter or working harder. They got in earlier and the Brinks truck backed up. But they're not hungry anymore. They might get bored. They might want to go to climb Everest for 3 months and just drop you and then your company goes away. I still got the hunger in my belly because I still want to contribute and I still have to pay bills. So you own me when you have me on that retainer. That retainer's not a nice to have. I need that. So that's what I would say.
Okay, and I kind of had two questions mixed up because the chat was moving quickly. So let me go back to Kelly one more time because I think this is an important question. So many of my colleagues feel like no one will take them seriously in the business world once they're over 50. And that's a bias against them. Look, ageism is absolutely real in the world, and we don't talk about that near enough. So she goes on to say, I refuse to believe that. How would you respond to this, especially with the backdrop of the massive layoffs by the big tech firms in the age of AI?
So everybody's laying off anybody over 50, period. And it's going to go down to 40 real soon. So first thing, and I address these things in the book, in Second Act Advantage. First thing is, don't internalize, hey, boomer jokes and memes, and da-da-da. Don't internalize it. Don't think you're less than. Don't think that you should be put back out to pasture, that your best years are behind you, that you can't, and da-da-da. Take all that noise away. Because here's what you have. You have the life experience of dealing with difficult situations that don't go according to plan. You've made your mistakes on somebody else's budget, okay? Also, if you're going to build a digital business, if you're going to build a consulting business, if you're going to build something online, they used to say in the beginning, in the 90s when we first made the internet, on the internet, no one knows you're a dog, okay? Because they don't know if a dog's answering. In the internet, they don't know that you're old, okay? They're paying for results and wisdom, okay? You can show them. What I would do is I would let their internal whippersnapper ask the same questions that they want of you, and they'll get the ChatGPT, slop back, and then you give the annotated of why AI is getting it wrong, because AI doesn't have life experience. Things don't work according to plan. Every time I've had to go up against things, Kelly, you know me from this time period. When Napster was taking down the music industry and we were laying off hundreds of thousands of people, all the labels were just bleeding, okay? Every lawyer from the biggest firms, when Napster raised their $80 million, I gave a speech in France and I said, the difference between last year and now is fuck you, pay me. That money's now mine, okay? And I'm out, the NDAs are now expired. Every law firm, and they had the biggest law firms, all went after them because they all looked at what the laws and how to interpret and da-da-da, and they all looked at contracts and copyrights. I looked at interstate grand theft. I looked at I could make a case for RICO, don't know whether it'll go through, but if you're not familiar with RICO, it's how you take money away from criminal enterprises in the mob. If you have a RICO case, you don't just get the money in the bank, you get all the money of everybody in the association, so everybody's homes and everybody's in. So in this case, the VC firm is funded by pension funds, the Teamsters, the this one, the that one, the California Teachers Association. So if it goes RICO, I get all the funds of the pension fund, not just what's in the venture capital fund. I get all of the teachers' fund. I wipe out the US. It literally took one day sitting in a court in DC for all that money to be mine. And it didn't go equally to all the labels because the labels were all looking at the law. And so they settled and everybody got paid the same amount for violating music. I got a giant check for them violating video. They didn't do anything in video, but nobody else asked for that settlement. So that's where all the money went. So your life experience can solve things that AI can't. That's what I'm telling you. AI is built on biased data. AI is built on the stories that people wanted told, not how things actually work, okay? And everyone here has their stories. Everyone here has their life experience of, had I listened to the boss, it would have crashed. But now that I solved it and didn't listen, the boss takes credit for it. I mean, that's Dolly Parton and 9 to 5. Hope that answered it. Next question. I'll try to be less
All right.
verbose.
This is a good one, too, and a great segue with what you just talked about. And, of course, what I've dedicated now my entire life to. Larita, I believe it's Watson. Your name's cut off in the chat, so my apologies if I got that wrong. But I want to know how to balance using AI responsibly, because that goes into what you just said, right? That a lot of the data that's in there is flawed and biased and all those challenges. You know, I always talk about it has all the knowledge in the world, but AI does not have wisdom. That's what we bring to the table as humans. So talk a little bit about how do we balance using this massive, powerful technology responsibly?
Again, broad brushstrokes. It depends on what you're doing. In the deep sciences, in the mapping protein folds and that stuff, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking for regular business uses. If you find yourself typing into, and I use several of them and have preferences for different things, but it changes every day. If you find yourself typing into something that could have been typed into Google, you're using AI wrong, okay? AI is for getting feedback and broadening your horizon. When I finished writing The Second Act Advantage, I wrote what I believed was the definitive book. There are books, two types of retirement books, basically. Here's your bucket list, or here's how to clip coupons. I didn't care about that. I wanted how people can thrive in this time of change, and it wasn't really retirement. It's for everybody that gets disrupted. So I finished the book, and I put into 3 different AIs. I want this to be the definitive book on the themes that are in there. What's missing? That's the question. Don't give it a leading question. Don't tell me, you know, what are the 6 things that were, you know, get it to broaden your scope. And what came back was a lot of stuff that wasn't in the book because I chose not to put it in the book. But there's one chapter that's in that book that wouldn't be there because it never occurred to me, because I don't tend to think in business in terms of the emotional needs of people. So there's a chapter, it really was fun for me to research because it didn't come naturally at first. Whatever your second act is, your partner may have had a different plan. I thought we were going to go travel. Well, no, I really want to stop the local pet shelter from killing dogs, or I want to help prisoners get a job. They paid their debt, and if they want to make them, you know, whatever it might be. So use it that way, and you'll find that it's like having a partner. There's a reason why, you know, Orville brought his brother into making the first plane, because he could bounce ideas off Wilbur, and Wilbur could say, no, you know, I got a different idea. It's that type of use. It's to bounce ideas. It's to question. It's not the sycophant that it's programmed to do. And that's the other reason why we built Digital J, that we named it differently. Digital J is not there to go, oh, you want to put 2 Oreos together with a staple? That's a great business, right? Because there's a whole website of a guy that shows the most ridiculous things that he puts into AI. Should I do this as a business? And it comes back, that's really clever. That looks really good. Or what do you think about this new filter that I'm using for my picture? And they go, oh, you've never looked better. And then he goes, oh, I realized, you know, I don't have any filter, you know, whatever. So that's how you use it. And don't fall into that trap. AI will make you dumber if you're outsourcing thinking. What you should be outsourcing is research of gathering of choices of things for you to then apply wisdom, as Harrison said so well. Excellent question, Loretta. Next.
Yeah, and you have to be careful. I just saw a study, AI psychosis is real. And there was a gentleman who his AI actually had him believing he created a new math. And he believed it. Like he went
so that's right. Now,
super far.
the dangerous ones is the kids that are lonely, alienated, feeling rejected at school. There's nobody that I've met that made it through junior high that wasn't bullied and doesn't feel that life was horrible, right? I was on the verge of suicide. These kids are being told by a particular brand of chatbot out there to kill themselves. They've said, I'm going to kill myself. They've shown pictures of, is this the right way to tie the noose? I mean, and the company's internal emails show that they knew this was, they'd rather just deal with it's a cost of doing business than put something out as safe as you can make it. That's why I didn't want to hand all these people off to somebody else's AI. Is my AI perfect? Is it there to solve everything? No, it's very specific. It's not going to cure cancer. Next
All right,
question.
Daniel Bray here. Daniel Bray, I'm sorry. This is a very good question. I need to preface, there's no legal advice in this particular webinar. But how do you determine what is defensible IP in a world of AI from what you've seen? Like, do you have any examples, any friends, any companies that have dealt with this?
Great
Because it's
question.
a wild west right now.
And since we're recording this, I'll remind everybody, I do not give financial advice. I do not give legal advice. I do not know what the future is going to be. And I definitely as fuck do not give medical advice. Your question's a really good one. So I spent a lot of time in IP, right? I did the whole, what could music be used for, copyrights. And I spent a lot of time with the best IP lawyers, which side of the table they were on. I was fascinated by their thinking. Here's the way I answer your question. The laws, look at the age of people in Congress and White House and everybody. The people that are in power they still have somebody that they're dictating emails to. I mean, they just don't understand any of this stuff. So the legal system trails technology by 20 years, okay? And technology is now moving at lightning speed. The proof of that was, and I love art and I do a style of art that's pop art. Andy Warhol was a pop artist that would take a photo, not snap a photo, would steal a photo, would lift a photo, and throw paint on top of it and make a silk screen, and that was his artistic creation. And so a lawsuit was from somebody that took a picture of the artist Prince. He held the copyright to that photo. That was his unique photo, and he sued the Warhol. Andy's been dead a long time. This case was just settled last year. 2 decades gone through the courts. And what's interesting is what was written in the paper and what the ending of that was is not the truth. Okay, so I'll get to that in a second. So my point to your question is, by the time they figure out what IP is, I'm dead. Okay, like this is going to be dealt with forever. So I'm not telling you to be, a pirate and going crazy, but I love the 2 song creation softwares, Udio and Suno. Suno cut a deal with the labels. They dealt with the J of today, and they're going to thrive. And the other guys can't get any capital. So be careful, make sure you get capital. Now, getting capital, no one's going to be able to raise capital. Why? Because all those data centers can't get enough capital. The US government doesn't have enough capital, okay? 83% of all investment capital from VCs and private equity went to 3 companies last year. So your great idea, crowdfunding, community, and all that. So don't worry so much about the IP. It'll figure itself out in a way. I mean, don't be straight out, an obvious IP, but that's the broad brushstrokes. Great questions.
All right, this one's coming in from Michael K, and I'm sorry I can't see your last name in the chat here. And this is a really good question, because the way that you frame it, we can kind of go a couple of different ways with this one. Hold on, I just lost it. How do we get people to hear the one thing AI can never understand or duplicate is human engagement? It doesn't have the experiences to share. And let me frame this a little bit within that, right? Because And you've already alluded to it. Like there's AI that's got people to actually off themselves. I want to be careful. I know this is getting recorded and going out. There is people falling in love with their AI. So we do know to a certain extent that it is able to fake or simulate this engagement. And when you're in a world like that, how do you make it clear to people that, look, this isn't real? This cannot replace human engagement. It just can't.
The geniuses, and I have a Substack. If you don't follow my Substack, I whatever my thoughts are on these things, I'm always doing. But I just wrote one that comes out in a week or so, just saluting that everything that we're dealing with right now, science fiction writers wrote excellent novels 100 years ago to tell us exactly these things that are happening. You know, we're not going to be able to differentiate what's real and what's not very soon, okay? Like, everybody that's making all that money on OnlyFans and thinks that's a gravy train, I'm not judging in any way. AI can play that game, right? Right? Like, anything can be replaced. So the point is, you're not going to convince those that don't get that point. What you need to do is, why you have people that have spent most of their life with humanity, find them, connect with them, and build from there. The Silicon Valley model was not the best product wins. There's never been a case of that. It's he who grabs the most market share and grabs the most capital. If the other guy has a search engine and he's raised $100 billion and I have a better one, no one's going to fund me because I'm better. They'll wait for me to be crushed and the big guy will just buy me, okay? I had a better way of doing AI that I was chairman of, and the heads of the three big ones that have raised hundreds of billions privately have all said, yes, we were right. What we were doing is now incorporated into the next generation of NVIDIA chips, but they now have trillion-dollar companies. So build what you can quickly. Build a following and an audience, and the proof will be in the experience, right? The fidelity of sound that you get listening to your stereo at home, I don't care if it's vinyl, CD, 8-track, is much better than you've gotten at any concert that you've been to. But going live gives you something that you don't get. You get the feeling of a crowd. There's a reason why movie theaters were shared experiences. Comedies were funnier when there's somebody that had a weird laugh and they're picking up the joke 2 seconds later than you. It's just the crowd dynamic, the human dynamic. We are tribal, right? Up until the electric light, sun goes down, it's dark, you had enough manpower to keep one communal fire going, and so people gathered around and told stories. Culture built from those stories, religion built from those stories, how we treat each other, morality built from those. So that's what I would focus on. Next question. These are great questions, by the way.
One thing I do want to touch on a little bit here too, but back to the isolation piece. I shared a stat in the chat, and there is studies, plenty of studies that talk about isolation increases premature mortality. Like, we have to have that human connection.
I will semi-friend DA something that, so I put what I do out to the universe. I mean, I didn't set to work at the White House. The president called me when I was a little company minding my own business, but I wrote about that I thought the internet, getting it into the schools could change things, and we put it in every classroom. So in putting out what I think should be changed in focus, the Kingdom of Bhutan has reached out, and we're trying to do something similar to a Sun Valley or World Economic Forum, Clinton Global Initiative, IFF type, getting senior people around the world, senior scientists, senior tech companies, sovereign wealth funds, because that's what's going to get people in the room. We don't really need all this compute power to do a kid's homework. We do not need all this compute power to paint a painting, do graphics. Yes, it does a great job. But wouldn't it be nice to get resources focused on, we could cure cancer quicker, we could extend quality of life, give, equity around the world. We now are on the cusp of having unlimited power, electricity, getting solar to be much more effective and much more cheaper. So, feed the hungry, clothes and health the poor. I mean, so what's interesting about Bhutan and His Majesty is they do not measure gross domestic product. They measure gross domestic happiness, and it's not a bumper sticker. So can we focus putting resources? I'm not talking all the resources. I'll be fine just getting the guilt portion of money. I mean, Walmart, and I sat and had dinner with the family, and so Walmart didn't go into solar energy because they suddenly found a tree to hug one day. They realized that their second biggest cost after employees was electricity. So what they did was great, is they said, this shouldn't be a competitive advantage. Everything that we've learned how to reduce the cost of fluorescent lights and do they cut their electricity like in half. Let's share with all the industry, right? And Target now has more solar panels on their roofs than anybody. So that's what I'm trying to get. I'm trying to change the conversation because nobody wants the world where it's headed. It just gets an inertia that, every lawyer that I ever met that wanted to be a lawyer was going to go back to the community and do good, and every doctor was going to go and help this one, but then they come out with $300,000 in student loans and said, I'll join the firm for a couple of years, but then they have a mortgage in private school. It's that guy in Star Wars. It's a trap. Yeah. My sister was I'll get in trouble, was vice dean of a major university of the med school, and I don't think she paid off her student loans till her kids were in college and parents. I mean, yeah, it's tough. Next question. Some good questions. I appreciate you.
This comes from Roberto. As an industrial designer, I see that physical products and craftsmanship are getting more important than ever. I expect this will hit hard as well. But there is such an amazing opportunity. Oh, it's moving on me. What are your thoughts regarding that industry, which does not look like AI can replace?
There are people to this day that go on Savile Road in London and buy $2,000 suits that are handmade and hand-stitched. There are people that like handcrafted. They're like artisanal cheeses. They like craft beers, okay? Whether there's anything different or it's a bragging right of some people or it becomes, when every car is mandated to be self-driving on the road because human drivers kill people, there will still be private land where the wealthy can ride their Ferraris around and race and go and have, their stuff, just as you can't ride a horse on the streets anymore, but the rich seem to be able to ride horses. So there will be, but I don't think it'll ever be mainstream because there is a cost to things. Now, there are those that believe that there's some universal basic income that'll take care of everybody, and so everybody can do those things. I think it's always been a dog-eat-dog world and always will be, so I don't know. I wish I had a better answer. Good questions.
All right, let's go to Sam. Jay, given what we are now learning about the elite classes, political double dealing, corporate indifference, do you think that society can be saved in a way that regular people can survive?
So from the first time a bunch of people got together in one cave and they were worried about the other cave, there was somebody that said, hey, that lightning, that was, such and such. I can talk to that lightning. You now give me food. I don't have to work. I mean, there's always been the royalty. There's always been whatever class that power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And yet we still had the Age of Enlightenment through the darkest ages where Europe was controlled by one organization. It's just the basic nature. We have a natural good in us because we can go back to when we're just hominids, not even, Homo sapiens, where they found fossils of, 20 or 30-year-olds that had a healed femur, a thigh bone. Well, that person couldn't have gotten food for themselves. That person couldn't have, there had to be someone that cared, and our babies are born, completely unable to care for themselves. So it's in our nature. So I'm not pessimistic. What I do believe is, just as we had a pandemic and it was easily known that we would have pandemics, we had the first major one in the U.S. in the influenza in the World War I time. We're going to have a technical glitch that is of a major size that we don't know. And we can all agree, because nothing's flawless. And I think we'll learn from that, and we'll realize to take a step back. Every change, the French Revolution, the king was a tyrant, but the people that then came in, they were tyrants. And then, it's a pendulum. It swings back, but it comes to center. So I just want to arm our side. My ask for everybody is, I thought I could rise above the noise to get the word out on this book. I failed miserably. Podcasts 10 years ago were people talking about ideas. Late night television, nobody watches. So all your movie stars and all your marketing budgets went on all the big podcasts. So that's the only guests that you see on those things, right? It's become Johnny Carson. Every journalist has been replaced. 70% of the Wall Street Journal is written by AI. I mean, there's no people to reach to get above the noise. So it's up to, can each of you get 5 friends this week to buy a book? And, is there somebody that that's hurting, that this could help? And get them involved, and then have conversations among yourself. Start talking in the second act society. Start seeing the tools and sharing the positive, because nobody wants to see avocado toast. I mean, it didn't work so well for that generation.
All right, we got a great question from Chris Montgomery here. What are your thoughts about sectors that traditionally have been hourly based, right? Legal, accounting, things like that, for example, having to move to value based because AI is creating those efficiencies that reduce the hours to deal with those projects and contracts?
Well, now they know what piece workers, as in PIECE, piece workers feel like at a garment factory. They're paid by, how many socks that they deliver, or, farmhands were how many bales of cotton, how many bags of cotton they brought in. Your law firms, most legal is cut and paste. Most legal is in Perry Mason in a courtroom, or Matlock or whoever. You're going to see accounting, audit, consulting firms. I mean, and a couple of them have already been outed where they've been paid millions to do a project. And when they look at the footnotes in the report, well, the senior guys got the meeting and got the project. The kids straight out of college were just using ChatGPT, and oops. Yeah, no, I don't see it didn't make sense to pay somebody hourly. You're paying somebody for what you need, and you can put a price on that. My lawyer back in the day, I never paid hourly. I knew he was the best at what he did, and I'm competing for his time against other people. So I'll pay this much to deal with this and put me to the top of the pile. And that's what hourly people are going to have to go to, a buyer's market.
All right, Cindy, another great question. Now with AI, what are your thoughts on diversifying your ideas, right? We're all going to have thousands of ideas now, and working on multiple things at once versus what we've been taught forever, right? Focus, putting all your eggs in one basket.
If you spend some time with agentic AI, and it's getting really good really fast. I used it for the first time, for all my tech stuff. I'm not an engineer, big surprise. I've just hung around with people that do everything. But I built something for the first time, and I was really proud of myself because I didn't have to call Harrison or Skip or John, who were on the call, and say, guys, can you do this? You'll be able to empower workers to go and make money for you on their own. Another thing that I talk about in the book is you have knowledge. You have institutional knowledge, might even be the company that laid you off of how to do X, Y, and Z, that you can create a course and put it on many platforms out there. So it's not a live course, it's go take the course. AI can build the whole thing for you, question and answer, reading homework, everything, and make money. There's a robotics guy that did a course that got 100,000 people the first month that paid for the course, right? And some of these courses are, what to be aware of as a first-time home buyer. In the old days, somebody would have put that up on YouTube and you make, 1 cent per 1,000 people. Now you get 1,000 people that'll pay you $10. That's $10,000. I went to public school. I can do that. So play with those things to give you multiple sources, because none of us know where the giant disruption is. If Adobe could get broadsided like a ship, where all of a sudden nobody needs SaaS software, that model's gone. All right? You're going to see giant companies of all type go to zero. Now, to the people that ask the question of what about, wheeling and dealing in Washington? The most amazing electric car, BYD, they're blocking from coming into our country, right? My fantasy dream, I did cross country 13 times, right? My favorite childhood memory. I've been to all the states. I love tourist traps. I just loved it. I took my kids, right, to see what changed and what didn't, and I loved it. And now that I have 2 granddaughters, I can't do the hours, but if somebody would make a self-driving motorhome, well, there's one in China that we can't bring into the US that's $40,000, sleeps 7, solar's the complete top. They did a grounds up of it's a battery on wheels. The company BYD started to make a battery. So there's always going to be people that get an unfair advantage because they can game the system from their wealth. But nobody's focusing on the cracks that you're going to focus on. And those cracks can be worth $10 million this year, right? If I could take a homeless guy and he can make $1 million finding a small little crack, now's where nobody's done anything. My first year before we had the interface on the internet and I'm doing stuff, I came up with 2 product ideas. I'm like, we could now edit video on a computer and not have to pay outrageous fees in a post suite. Or because I couldn't get manuals from IBM, they had to FedEx a giant box and print stuff out at their end. I said, what if I could type something on my computer and send it to Harrison? He could read it on his computer. I called it digital mailman. I go, that'll take too long to catch on. Nobody had thought of email. Like nobody's thought of 1,000 money-making things, just like nobody thought of all the apps when the iPhone came out. That's your opportunity right now. So put out a few of them, because Agentic can do most of the work for you, and it doesn't take any capital.
Yeah. All right, Harry, we've got a question here. So first off, incredible insights, Jay. Thank you. Are you familiar with OpenEXO and A360's theory on organizational singularity and how us 2D actors are going to adapt?
There's a lot to pack in, and that's a conversation, I think, more for a different crowd. But in the short version, I don't get the sudden anger or surprise about 2D actors, okay? There's a guy who we all worship because he changed all our lives, who put Mickey Mouse, a 2D actor, on some film, and he classically said the reason why he liked his studio is because when he had a problem with an actor, he could just rip him up, okay? So there's always been animation. There's always been, the synthesizer got rid of musicians. It was against the law prior to World War II to play a recording of music on the radio. Most people were too young to know that, because the musicians union, like, if CBS just plays records, all these musicians are going to be out of work. So when we drafted all the guys to go to war, they cut a deal with the label, with the musicians union, and said, for every record, we'll pay you something. And that musicians union still gets money for music played, even though there's next to nobody in that union. So 2D actors will still work. People with personalities will still work. I mean, there's no absolute change. The difference is, if you look at 5,000 years of civilization, or 14,000 from every civilization in virtually every part of the world has always had music. We have less than 100 years where there was money to be made, okay, where the richest people were people that had created an art form, until business got involved and figured out how to stop giving the money to the creators, okay? And publishing was the same, and, you know, we're now seeing the same thing. So there will be all these industries. There will always be, you know, you can make a great film all by yourself. That's empowering, okay? There's no gatekeepers. But there's not going to be an absolute change. Time for a couple
Clive
more.
brings up something great here. Jay, what advice would you give to second act, over 65 entrepreneurs? Because with all these ideas are going to come this, how do they raise capital at that age?
Excellent question. Cover it in the book. There's a bunch of ways to raise capital. There was an announcement, and I did a Substack on a couple weeks ago, that one of the AIs now has AI in a box. They want you to use all their tools. They're free until you get to a certain size, you know. But they're also tying in giving seed capital to businesses that do X, Y, and Z. There are tons of places to get capital. Raising capital has never been the barrier to success. Understanding how to raise capital has been. The other thing is crowdfunding. And I'll just give an example, because I've raised hundreds of millions, if not a billion at this point, from VCs and whatever. My art, see some of it behind you. I do it to keep sane. I love it. I was thrilled that I got discovered from posting. It wasn't a business plan. And very rich people collect my art, sold at galleries for ridiculous amounts of money that I can't keep a straight face, but I'm not going to say no. But so many of you that are on here, and so many fans like my art and comment and enjoy it and whatever, I wanted them to have it. And the only way to do that would be to print a book, and color books and oversized books and high quality, you know, Taschen type books are very expensive. So let me take out all the costs out of it, find a printer, I'll do all the heavy lifting all by myself. And I did a crowdfunding campaign so fans could get the book, okay? I didn't know if anybody'd say anything. I didn't get any help from anybody. I typed in all the fields all by myself. And I'm used to a guy that has delegated for a lot of years. And I'm semi-dyslexic, so I didn't know if I did it right. So I had breakfast. I stayed up all night doing it. I go back to my computer to see, did it load or whatever? And I was sold out. I was so touched and validated as an artist, right? But then you look at a thing called Exploding Kittens. There's somebody made a card game. You have to print 2 decks of cards, 2 different decks of cards, 52 different pictures, and it's a little card game. They wanted to raise $10,000. I was trying to raise more for a book, right? And the campaign on Kickstarter is 30 days, and as we know, things go viral because Venus and Mars and Jupiter's and whatever. And I forget the number. It's in my deck, that my stump deck. $12 million they raised the first month, right? They suddenly had millions of things. They had to figure out shipping and ordering, and they were just trying to raise $10,000. So crowdfunding is an amazing thing, and Kickstarter really has taken out all of the friction. They collect the payments, they organize. I mean, there's things that you can buy to do the pick, pack, and ship. There's companies that'll do that for. I mean, story for another day. But funding is an issue, and these are the types of, as you're getting further into your thing, these are what I'll be around for office hours to steer to specific stuff, or call this guy at this company, where I can help. You can do it. For everybody that's on here, I know you can do it. I won't let you fail to try.
All right. Do you want to share a little bit more? Where do they get the book? A little bit of
Okay.
more about what's
Yeah,
in
let me
that
do
book,
a
this
wrap up.
digital J?
You guys have been generous with your time hanging around so much. I hope this was valuable for you. So the books, wherever books are sold, Amazon rankings probably the most important to me, because if I can hit their algorithm, so there's two places where I need your help. One, I mean, buy books for friends, but it's better to tell your friends to buy it so that's books to separate addresses. If I can hit whatever their magic number is, I'm close, then you're on their bestseller list, then it gets referred, and then it becomes self-fulfilling. It takes off. That's what happened with my other book by accident. Step two, if you like the book, if you found value in the book, please put a review, whatever you want to say, give it 5 stars. If the book got damaged because FedEx dropped it, don't give it a 2-star because the box came damaged. I will fly to your house and scream, because that affects, again, the algorithm. So, if by the end of next week, because it launches on Cinco de Mayo, launches next week, and they count all the pre-sales into that first week. So that's the only time I get to stack the deck and have great numbers. And the numbers are looking good, but I don't know what I'm competing against in other people's numbers. And then the second thing is they're going to look at, are you getting good reviews? And if those two things line up, it takes a life. If you connect to it, if this message resonates, if you're going to have a second act, be public about it, share, get involved, turn this into community. I don't have the wisdom, strength, hours to do it all. I'm also going to be focusing for this November conference as much energy as I can on trying to get those that have the billions to point them to things other than weaponization of AI. If I have to guilt them, I mean, we guilted artists every time we threw a charity concert that raised millions of dollars. I'll try my best. So I thank you for your time, everybody. I thank each of you for when you comment on my things and share my things and repost my things. And I'll be trying to get all my thoughts that are new. And if I see an amazing tool, I'm putting it on Substack, because I can't control in social media whether you actually get to see what I post, because they throttle you down for reasons that are ridiculous. So again, thank you all. Pre-order the book. There's links in there in the chat if you haven't. And I'm humbled that you took the time and that you'll help, co-pilot this adventure. And I'm open to all ideas, all improvements. I'll go on anybody's podcast if you have a friend, a cousin, a next door neighbor who once knew somebody, whatever it takes, a reporter who writes for, like no reporter in Indiana has written about me in their paper. If I knew somebody in Indiana that knew a journalist in Indiana, could make that extra phone call. See the guilt? See how I do it? I'm leaning hard this time because I think this is my last chance to help steer the arc of humanity, and I feel so guilty for the technologies that I helped make become so successful that I didn't see that people would hijack them. So tune it off, do whatever. Thank you, and thank you all, and have a great weekend and a great second act. I'll answer emails if you email me later. Everybody can figure out how to get me, but I think this is enough time for everybody. Thank you, Harrison, for doing this.
Thank you.
Applause to Skip and Jonathan to make this whole community and what you'll be going to in the Second Act Society that make that run and work and have volunteered tremendous hours to make this possible. So again, peace out, as Ringo would say, and I can't wait to see what you're building.